This March 8th is International Women's Day, with marches and demonstrations being held around the world. The theme this year is women in leadership. And to tell us a bit more about that, let's bring in France 24's Annette Young, the host of the 51%. Hi, Annette.
Hi, Julie.
People around the world, obviously this year, very, very hard hit by the pandemic. What kind of effect has that had on women, and particularly women in leadership around the world?
I mean, when I think of it, Jeannie, 12 months ago, sitting in this studio, a few days later, this country went into lockdown. So it does happen to coincide with the first year anniversary of COVID-19. And wow, what a 12 months we've just experienced, particularly when it comes to women. Nearly 1 million women have lost their jobs in the US alone. A Fawcett study, which is a Fawcett Society study, Fawcett Society being an organisation that promotes gender equality in the UK, found that in Britain women were twice as likely to need time off with no pay to look after children. In fact, according to a survey of 50,000 mothers by the Trade Union Congress, which is the overarching organisation which represents all unions in the UK, 71% of working mothers applied for furlough. In other words, for some degree of assistance from their companies while they took time off, but their request was turned down. So, on the work side alone, when you look at the two biggest English-speaking countries, the impact it's had there in the business side, I mean, it is extraordinary. For those who managed to stay at work, gender pay gap reporting was cancelled for 2020 for just after 2 years of implementation. Women, in terms of their health services, we all remember those first few months, women giving birth alone in a labour ward with very little assistance, not with their loved ones, not with their partners. For instance, in Britain alone, 600,000 women have missed their yearly smear tests because all those services were shut down. On a broader scale, the UN Women's Deputy Executive Director, Anita Bhatia, has warned that as a result of this pandemic, women's rights, well, basically a year of the pandemic, could wipe out 25 years of progress on women's rights. And then we haven't mentioned either that horrendous issue of domestic violence, where even in France, there was a massive surge upwards, I think somewhere between 25 to 30% during that first lockdown of reporting about cases on domestic violence. And of course, that was the case across the world.
And then what about countries that are ruled by women? It seems, and maybe I'm just generalizing here, but it seems that those countries that do have women leaders have done better in regards to dealing with the pandemic.
I would say you're absolutely right. When you look at those countries that were led by women, such as Denmark, Finland, New Zealand, Germany, and so on, they have done a better job. I mean, granted, in the second wave, some might argue Angela Merkel took her foot off the pedal a bit, but basically, most of those countries have done very well indeed. In fact, women-led countries have fewer COVID-related deaths, a smaller number of days with confirmed deaths, and a lower peak in daily deaths. And even if you look within the US itself, research has shown that states with female governors have fewer COVID-related deaths than states with male governors. Why? I did an interview with Margaret Heffernan, a very renowned academic entrepreneur, who's also an author on management and managing. She's even written a book about the pandemic, but ironically, months before COVID-19 actually happened. And I asked her, why? Was it just coincidence? She said no. Because when it comes to management, women have had to operate out of the system. For a long time, we see strong leadership as code for being male leadership, alpha male leadership. And as the pandemic has shown, in fact, what gets a country through is leadership with empathy, a person with great communication skills, and most importantly, the ability to take advice from people who know better, who have no problems with collaborating. And those are all key elements, I think, with all of those women who've been leading the countries in the last 12 months.
Annette, thank you so much for that. France 24's Annette Young, the perfect person to be speaking to us today about International Women's Day. You are the host of the 51%. Thank you, Annette.